for you. So the first one is the major industry funds being invested in VR make it look almost as if VR is being led into the promised land of the future. Having said that, a couple of years ago, we saw the major fund invest into stereoscopic as well. Well, that didn't result in high returns, especially in Korea. So not everyone has an optimistic view on the current situation. So can the panel share your thought of that? Start from Scott.
Yeah, it's a topic that comes up a lot. We have a lot of theater owners asking if VR is going to keep people from going to the movie theater. There's certainly a lot of investment funding in VR, way more than 3D movies, but I mean, I think it's not unusual for a new medium like this to get that kind of attention. And I think you've all seen the kind of cycle of adoption and then kind of low, crashing and then slow consumer take-up. So I think it'll take a while for it to kind of reach a level where it's something we use every day. The cost is fairly expensive still, but I guess we'll talk about that later. I don't know. I mean, in my presentation I brought up the issue of success, and I think for me it's not really just about number of commercial units sold. I think it has a lot to do with cultural impact, impact on application areas like medicine and vision, like James talked about an amazing application of VR that he's developing that I think goes way beyond just kind of commercial success.
Sometimes people think about 3D television as a failure, but I think that maybe it takes more time for it to really be successful, and that maybe there was a lot of investment and a lot of expectation that something would happen in 1 year or 2 years and it would go through the roof. And yeah, the curves don't really work that way. We talk about how somebody becomes very famous and it seems like they became famous overnight, but often it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. So sometimes it's like that, where it might take 30 years for VR to, if you look 30 years ago, we had VR, and look at where we are now. It took time.
Yeah, I think you have to look at, successful for what uses. So for example, for us, a $600 or $700 headset is sort of, people are willing to pay that to treat a medical condition that they have. At least some people. But when it gets to the point where every phone for $20 to $100 becomes a VR headset that's as good or probably better than what we have available today for $600, then I think you're going to see all kinds of use cases that price point can justify, where today's price point can't justify that. And I think we're very, very close to that happening. I think every major phone that's being designed today, they're thinking about VR. They're making sure these phones are sort of ready to become VR headsets at the point of designing the hardware, which is where. So I think in 1 to 2 years, we're not talking about a $600 or $700 investment to get a VR headset. We're talking about a $30 investment to upgrade your phone.
Yeah, and same from my point of view, from looking at it from the AR world, right? We are trying to implement VR-ish features into the experiences we create, right? I mean, right now, we can go out and take a smartphone with a gyroscope in it, and even you won't get maybe the immersive 3D, but you'll get the ability to get a 360-degree view of what's around you. So, I mean, I know that's not really the VR that we're talking about here, but we're getting, like even today, that is very simple to do. And I think as, you know, as the technology gets cheaper, and because really it's about pushing the pixels, right, guys? Isn't that kind of like what it is? Is that maybe should I be the panel? Can I ask you guys? So what's it going to take to make VR cheaper? I mean, is it what's the one thing that's stopping you guys from getting that price point down to something that's
It's all, like I talked in my talk. It's a lot of it's the economy of scale.
Yeah.
So smartphones. Everybody has one. So we're talking millions or maybe billions of units. So that pushes the cost down. But for VR, right? The adoption rates aren't going to go to that level for a while. And what you talked about was you wanted to make it useful for everybody.
Yes.
And if it's useful for everybody and it changes the culture, right, then people will want to adopt it, and then we'll see those numbers, and then we'll see the economies of scale kick in.
I think a good example of just needing the economy of scale is in eye tracking, where the hardware itself is cheap, but if you want to buy a headset with eye tracking built into it today, it's going to cost you $10,000 or more. If you just want to buy it and it works.
Yeah.
But that's going to be automatically built in to any headset, built after two or 3 years from now.
Yeah, I'm sure you're watching the Fove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, James, you talk about the $700 of the headset, and Sean is talk about how to make it cheaper. So, well, the next topic is related to the price thing. The Oculus Rift and HoloLens are still pricey for the mass market, and still lots of content developers are in waiting and see mode until the hardware reaches higher penetration rate in the market. So how do you think it'll take until the three aspects of hardware and content and market to become generally accepted to mass market consumer in terms of the technology and price wise?
So yeah, this was the danger that I talked about with all the different companies competing for each other. You have to choose what boat you want to jump into. And you may float or you may sink, and you don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to, as academics would do, change the question, right? So when we talk about the mass market, there are very few companies that actually go after the mass market in anything. There, a lot of times, the most successful companies are, they have a niche, or there's a particular thing that they're trying to do, and so a particular type of buyer that they're working on. So, so in some sense, if we're looking at gamers who will spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for the gaming computer that they use, another $900 for the display is not a big deal.
But I think you made a really important point in your presentation. The danger aspect was one, but you also made a point about starting with gaming and having that scale across other application areas. And game consoles are very inexpensive now. Xbox, PlayStation, that kind of dedicated graphic capability, that's really an easy entryway. And we're starting to see game companies embrace broader definitions of game. It's sort of more about entertainment than it is specifically game these days.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, the niche markets where customers are willing to spend a lot more, the hardcore gamers, or in our case, people with lazy eye, that's what drives the growth to get to the point of scale where you can get it cheaper to have mass adoption. And I think, or another good example is like the Void, where they're building, these physical locations that are mixed reality that are expensive to build, But I think experiences like that, where people will spend $30 each to go and do it, are what's going to kind of bridge the gap on the way towards mass adoption, which is still going to take years.
This reminds me of that old cliche, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So you just got to choose which bite that you're going to do, which part of the elephant you're going to bite off first.
How about the AR? Is it?
Well, I mean, gray AR, it's really smart of us to understand what we do well and what we don't when it comes to the entertainment world. And, you know, a good example, even though I kind of badmouthed it a little bit, was, you know, the Pokemon Go experience, right? You know, it's not massively difficult technology that they're using. I mean, it's well thought out and it's using a great IP, but, you know, it knows what it can do and it knows what it's good at, and it hit right there at that target at the right time. So, you know, for AR, we need to be that more simplistic. We have to take a more simplistic approach and not try to be that total immersive VR experience. And then, like someone was saying earlier, someday we're going to meet in the middle, you know, and there's going to be this awesome mixed reality experience. It's going to be the best of both worlds. And, you know, when that happens, then I think we've hit that's the promised land that you were talking about before, I think, when that happens.
We've done a lot of work with Google on Google Glass, which seems like a kind of obvious next step as a platform for the kinds of stuff you're doing. I mean, there were a lot of problems with Google Glass because of the camera and perceived invasion of privacy and things like that. But the fact is, there were some wonderful applications that ran on Google Glass. One was called Field Trip that had specific information tied to specific locations that as you walked around with Glass, it would pop up on this display in the context of that location, which is a tremendous learning capability, entertainment to some extent. But, you know, it surprises me that went away so quickly.
Yeah, I felt like the cultural backlash was so strong that they didn't understand what happened, that it hit them so fast.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, sometimes you gotta, it's the cultural acceptance that's really the most important part. The technology is there, but you gotta put it forward in the right form.
Right.
I guess we'll see if HoloLens does better where Google kind of faltered. It seems like the HoloLens is the next real AR platform, and it seems like it's getting a lot of things right, except for price.
Yeah, like it doesn't have a little red light for a camera.
Well, and that's the other point. There is this sort of like vanity too, as well. You know, I think people love that orange. Yeah, I'm cool, but actually it turned into another word, which I'm not sure I can say on stage, but it starts with a G and ends in holes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those type of people people looked at them and went, oh, I don't want to be like them. And
yeah, it sort of became this tribal thing,
yeah,
right? So I mean, you got to understand the sociology when you bring the product forward, and you know the haves and the have-nots, and how it makes people feel, and you're included or not included. And so if that technology feels like it's pulls society apart, no one's going to enjoy that.
For sure.
Okay. All right. Let's jump to the next topic. Well, how much of ripple effect do you anticipate that VR will have for the future? Well, for example, do you think it will be similar to smartphone, which completely changed our daily life, or remain a specialized field such as game or movies?
I think that for personal experiences, so the kind of work I do on my PC, the kind of work I do on my laptop, I think I'm going to want VR for that. And for all the things I do on my phone, I think I'm going to want AR for that. And so I kind of see, it's not sort of one or the other. I think we're going to have these really high quality less mobile VR experiences for our sort of hard work, and then much lighter mobile AR experiences where that gives you that overlay that's always present, extra information when you want it to bring it back up.
I think that's, I would agree. I mean, I think the kind of laptop phone progression trajectory makes a lot of sense. I showed a quick clip of some of the work that Oculus is doing for social VR, and I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest, have the most impact in not a very far future. So imagine, and I think this is what Zuckerberg was thinking and intends for Facebook's acquisition of Oculus, is to make the transition from posting photographs, posting videos on something like Facebook, being able to share those experiences in 2D, to being able to actually capture more about the location, the place, the context, kind of all. It's a much richer set of information that you can use to communicate what you're doing, where you are, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, to this kind of social group that you're involved in. I mean, it may be hard to visualize that, but I think that's going to be a really strong, strongly embedded in our kind of everyday experience.
Yeah, I would agree. I think something, for me, I use Skype pretty often, I'm sure we all do, and the context you get about the other person's location is pretty limited, right? That field of view is relatively small, you know, but sitting in my perspective, right? I'd love to show my kids that I'm on stage at this conference and let them see, you know, a little bit about what's going on, and being able to capture this panorama would be really, really awesome.
Yeah, and for Blippar, you know, I probably beat this point to death earlier, but it's all about how we can incorporate this into our daily lives and make it more normal, right? And, you know, like going back to those glasses, and those weren't really normal, right? I mean, right now the normal is a smartphone, and that's the nice thing kind of about what we're doing, is because it's a software solution, we just kind of got to look at what the next hardware is and figure out a way to fit into what that is. So kind of like the pressure's off a little bit. We just have to make sure the experience is absolutely perfect. You know, that's our number one goal.
Well, when I try to pick the topic, I try to make some controversial topic, but it seems like nobody's on the negative side. But of course, well,
we can try to work harder.
Yeah, I'm on the positive side too. Well, the next is there have been simultaneous technological advancement being made recently in VR, AR, MR, and hologram industry. Well, but some of technology may not be as successful as the other, and perhaps even get mixed or absorbed by the other technology. Yes. So I'm sure this would cause confusion amongst the academic students that are trying to decide which field are focused on. So can you provide a word of advice of the students that are in this situation?
Well, so in our university, just in the last year or two, it's an incredibly difficult challenge for us as faculty and administrators to provide enough resources for the students to make the VR projects they want to make. Every single one of our students wants to have at least one VR project as part of their portfolio when they go out to industry or whatever they do in their careers. So, but I think it's a difficult question in the sense that there are different points of development. As soon as I show students our HoloLens, they immediately want to start developing for that as well. So I'm not sure you can really compare them at this point.
Well, the one nice thing I will say about Blippar is that if you want to go out and create augmented reality experiences right now, there is no resource problem. It's free. You know, we have actually opened up our tools to everyone. So if you know JavaScript, you can create any of the things that I showed you today on the screen, just using those tools. So, you know, obviously you don't get the immersiveness and the great entertainment quality that you get with the VR, but again, it allows you to experience that right away and work with 3D space and sort of understand how that's different than developing on a flat image. So, by all means, if anyone has any questions about that, the students, if they'd like more information, I'd be happy to help.
I think there's a lot of overlap in the skills that are useful in all those areas. You don't have to, like, say I'm picking VR. I'm going to learn that, and I'm not going to do any MR later. You know, from my perspective, the skills that we've developed building VR experiences were extremely useful when we got to play around with a HoloLens or with a Google Glass. I mean, it's you know, there are some different, I think the differences are mostly in the design of the experiences more than they are the technical problems you're going to encounter. So I think for designers and people thinking about what experiences to make, then they probably have to put more effort into thinking about each one separately. But for a programmer or a technical person, I think whatever skills you pick up will be useful for all of them.
And do designers really limit themselves to one medium, right? I mean, maybe you don't do it, you know, if you're an artist or a designer, maybe you don't do every medium, but, you know, you choose a couple different ones that are related. So, you know, maybe you do a little bit of this part of the, you know, the spectrum, or a little bit more here on the AR side, or a little more here on the VR side, but you're not going to limit yourself to one particular platform, right? Yeah.
And so just one other comment too, that make me think of another challenge, I think, in this area. So a lot of the work that we talked about today is really, it comes out of technology development, which often comes out of engineering. So David, Mark Bolas, you know, many of the people working in this area have very strong technical backgrounds, but in my experience, you know, it's absolutely crucial to have artists, designers, creatives involved from the very beginning. I was lucky at NASA to have, I somehow ended up hiring a bunch of musicians and artists and kind of other creatives to be part of that team. And more often than not, I would come in the morning and find out that they'd stayed up all night creating some completely crazy immersive demo that pushed us very, you know, much farther ahead. I showed a picture of Ivan Sutherland wearing the headset, but next to him was Yakov Agam, who's a very famous artist as well, who somehow managed to get into Ivan's lab. My background's really in fine arts as well, so I mean, it's been, I had to kind of find ways to get involved with the technology that I needed, that I wanted to go the next step from stereoscopic photography to kind of making more immersive images. So if you're in the arts and design, you're desperately needed. Don't give up. Find a way to get involved. We need to find a way to get those people more involved.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that a little bit. So definitely, you know, if you have a company or a research lab or whatever, or an art group, at a studio, don't fill it with all the same kind of person as yourself.
That's exactly right.
And also, you know, don't focus on only one thing. We like people who are weird and spiky and odd shaped. That, you know, I love people who can program a computer and can sew and are interested in, you know, photography and, you know, like to play simulation games, you know, or various combinations of that. You know, but if you are an artist or a designer, you know, in traditional art and design, right, you really need to understand your medium and understand how the paint flows into the canvas or whatever it is. Do the same thing in virtual reality or augmented reality and really understand what the technology can do, what that medium can do, can't do, and push those bounds and test things, but really get deep into that and don't just play the artist card where I don't need to understand how to program. I don't need to understand how chips and computers work. I'll just design some art thing. No, you really need to understand the medium itself.
Yeah, if you're an artist or a designer, one of the best things to do right now is just jump into Tilt Brush or any of the sculpting apps. And something we've started doing, and that I know other people do, is when we are thinking about a new level design, we'll go into Tilt Brush and sketch it out. I think we're going to keep using these VR tools to make VR. It's going to get easier and easier. And already, a lot of it's really useful. Like I could sketch out a life-size portion of a level in Tilt Brush and then export the model and bring it into Unity and then block it out and make it look nicer, So I think there's a lot of opportunities for people just to get into the applications and start using it, and then you get a feel for working with, life-size 3D space where you can walk around in it.
My Tilt Brush and art reminds me that one of my colleagues got married recently, and he did a wedding guest book where you can sign and write messages. It was in Tilt Brush, so we could come in and paint and draw and write messages to him and his new wife, and it was really fun.
Yeah, that's got a million uses. A friend of ours gave a presentation on the industry landscape of VR, and his presentation was a 3D map of all the different companies and areas made in Tilt Brush, and then when he gives the presentation, he puts the headset on and walks around it.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Wow, that's
So there's lots of things you could do even with the tools that are already there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Especially, it'll be really helpful to get the not only artistic but also technical skill all together. Well, as Sean mentioned about the Pokemon Go, well, as we witness through the Pokemon Go, a single killer content can change the landscape of the given market. So, can you share a word of advice to developers out there that are striving to create the killer content in VR and AR? So now it's to the developer.
Are you asking what's the killer app for VR?
Well, any advice to who try to develop a killer content to VR market or AR market? What is?
Well, if we knew that, we wouldn't be here.
Right, I was
Right?
gonna say, I want someone to tell me that. Yeah.
That's what I like to know.
Yeah.
So let's not oversize the killer app, but to make a successful app,
Yeah.
I think we
Right.
need to do, like James has done, is really, understand a particular market segment or a particular problem really, really well, right? So like personal experience is a really great way to understand what the problem is, and I'm sure you're not the only source of information, right? You talk to doctors, you talk to other patients, but you have this starting point with your own personal experience. So embedding yourself into a problem and understanding your target market or your target consumer, and that's really what Palmer Luckey did, right? I mentioned, he was a gamer. He's a gamer. He knows that culture. He knows what people will accept and what people want, and Oculus Rift was and is that for that market.
I think you have to do that and then hope everyone else is like you too.
Yeah. But so
Not always.
feedback from other people is make sure that the decisions and the ideas and the assumptions you're making have more general validity.
Yeah, the user adaptation portion of what we do is really important, and luckily for us, we've had some really great partners who are, brands with marketing budgets who see that there's a potential that they can make their brand message easier to accept or more fun or just something new, and they want to invest in making this happen, right?
Yeah, so you really have two sets of customers, right? I mean, you have, customers like us who are walking down the street, and then you have these corporations or these organizations that have brand messages or experiences that they want to get out there to those consumers. So in some sense, you really have to balance the needs of both, because if they get out of balance,
Right.
They'll fall apart.
Exactly. The worst thing that could happen to the Blippar platform is it became just full of advertising. Then it doesn't become useful to anyone, right? So it is that balance of information sharing versus that hardcore brand messaging, right? We don't want to beat people over the head with messages. We want them to enjoy it. And that's why we play a big part in building that out too with them. We say, hey, look, I know you want to play your TV spot again, but they can see that on TV, and they've seen it on TV. You don't need to have a TV spot playing on your package. Let's create something more useful for them. Let's create something more fun. Let's invent something. And that kind of creativity, right, is what I like so much about this, because it is such a new area. I always say creativity isn't just for the creative department, right? There's creative ways to solve business problems. And that's why this AR canvas, it's a new painting every time. So it's a really exciting time to be in this place, because you can always offer your clients a new idea, right? I mean, any company could come to me, they could do anything. And I could probably think of an idea that would be just right for them, for AR. And it's because it's so new. And you can always have that world's first, or first time in this category, or first time ever to do this or this, and that's what's really exciting, especially in the marketing side.
And I think most companies face that issue of there's the needs of different groups of people. So for us, there's the needs of eye clinics, the needs of the patients, there's the needs of us as a company. And to be a successful company, you have to balance everyone's needs and get it to the point where everyone benefits. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
And hopefully it's not a point where no one benefits, because you've gone right in the middle of everyone's needs.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that place doesn't exist,
Yeah.
but where it does, that's, I think, where successful businesses live. So.
Totally.
So just one, maybe this will spark some controversy, but I mean, though you're talking about very specific problem solving, and I think often when I talk about VR and AR and mixed reality, there's inevitably someone who says or accuses us of being a technology looking for applications, which is really kind of an awkward position to be in. And to some extent, it's probably true. I think James is kind of the opposite of that. There was a very specific problem he wanted to solve, and he found a technology that could help solve that. I'd say that's the right approach to this.
Yeah, it was actually a pretty extreme opposite of that, because the first time I heard about virtual reality, I thought, I don't see it in 3D. 3D is a gimmick. This is not for me.
Yeah.
It's so when it became apparent it'd be useful for me in some other way, then I got interested in it. But I was working in this industry for a year and a half before I believed that VR would be useful for everyone else. And the first time I believed that was when I used Tilt Brush with the Vive controllers, and I thought real work could be done with this.
Yeah.
But before then I thought, it's useful for me, but all these other people, I don't know.
So this notion that VR is a technology in search of a problem, I'm going to argue and say that's not necessarily a bad thing. I would say that is what we have been doing in research labs for a long time. And this technology came up and people started building these things with some ideas in their heads. But we started studying it and seeing what it did to people and figuring out what could be done and what couldn't be done and what was just plain horrible with it. And so there are plenty of things, plenty of problem areas where VR doesn't make sense. But hopefully through the experience that we've had in these research labs and some of these papers and then rapidly, since all these developers are working with VR now, they'll discover these problems and map out that space and say, yeah, VR is good over here, AR is good, somewhere around here, and then, okay, here's some problem areas where, use something else.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. I mean, so that changes the conversation more to it being a kind of enabling technology rather than just in search of some range of applications.
It seems like you always wanted groups of people who were just investigating things because they were curious, just building things because they wanted to see if it could work. But then you also eventually need another group of people who can use those things to really solve problems.
Yeah, so
you want both happening all the time, I think.
Yeah, so I kind of tried to explain the role of the research lab is we have some crazy ideas, we try to build some stuff, we have some theories that guide us, we do some testing, and we demonstrate some capabilities. Yeah, this seems pretty good, this seems pretty promising, but we can only take it to a certain level, and we can't really, some of us can leave the lab and form a business, and some of us, I'm probably a horrible business person. We'll see. I don't know. I haven't started any businesses yet. But we show these things and we come up with these ideas, and then other people, please grab it and take it and turn it into some money. And it'd be nice if you would invest some back into the labs. But if not, okay. Hopefully it'll be a product that I like and I'll buy myself. So.
All right, well, those are the topics that I prepared for today. Let's get some questions from the audience. 저기 청중호 오신 분들 중에서 여기 연사분들한테 질문이 있거나 질문들 있으면은 지금이 기회입니다. 네, 저기 중앙에 모자 쓰고 계신.
For correct explanation, I will speak Korean to Mr. Nichols. 네. 아까 그 시연하신 거를 아까 잘 봤고요. 상당히 유용하게 여러 분야에서 잘 쓸 수 있을 것 같은데, 블리파라고 하는 그 애플리케이션이요. 근데 제가 이제 궁금한 거는 예를 들어서 사고가 났거나 예를 들면 자동차 사고라든지 아니면 일하다가 다쳤을 때 사람이 이제 다쳐가지고 그 상처나 부상 입은 부위가 있을 거 아닙니까? 그랬을 때 그거를 스캔하게 되면은 그 결과가 일단 어떻게 나올지가 궁금하고요. 덧붙여서 제가 생각할 적에는 제 시간에 이 연락이 돼서 응급구조대가 온다든지 하면은 크게 다치지 않고 아니면 사람 목숨도 살릴 수가 있는데, 예를 들어서 벙어리라든지 아니면 일시적으로 다쳐서 말을 못했을 때 아까 말씀드린 그런 상처 부위나 부상 입은 부위를 스캔해가지고 그거에 대해서 이제 그 응급 조치를 기본적으로 어떤 거를 알려줄 수 있으면 좋겠고, 더불어서 그 GPS 정보를 통해서 그 근방에 바로 연락이 가가지고 조치를 취해서 할 수 있다면은 지금도 훌륭하지만 더 좋을 거라고 이렇게 생각이 들어서요. 한번 여쭤보고 싶습니다. 예.
Yeah, brilliant ideas. Whenever you get into that medical world, it's always a little different. I know you just gave an example of a wound, maybe, which may be difficult to recognize. The thing is, as long as a human, right, can look at a wound from the outside, for instance, in this case, and be able to describe with words why that wound is a knife wound versus a gunshot versus a burn or whatever, then the ability to learn that through computer learning is possible. So that application, while very, very difficult because there's so many different varieties and types of wounds, I think there are some, like you said, there are some very typical ones where you would want to call right away. And I just worry, do you have time to actually scan that before you know you should be on the phone to 911? But yeah, I think for for medical purposes in general, you know, it's got great applications. AR does, because you know, when you have the glasses, right, you can have both of your hands, and doctors need both of their hands to do surgery or procedures or things like that. And even simple things, it doesn't have to be exactly surgery. It can just be, you know, certain procedures for kids. You know, the check marks can come up just right in front of their eyes. Did you check this? Did you check that? Okay, it could be this, it could be that. These are the kind of things that AR can add. They can augment that reality that they're working on right now. So all of the other things you mentioned about, you know, calling the emergency ambulance, getting them right on their spot because of GPS, all that stuff is great. Perfect ideas and definitely something that can be done. Yeah.
네, 그 다음 질문. 저기 중앙에 셔츠.
예, 감사합니다. 저도 션에게 질문하고 싶습니다. 아까 이 AR을 갖다가 실질적으로 사람들의 행동을 바꾸는 데 많이 중점을 두신다고 얘기하셨는데요. 좋은 아이디어라고 생각합니다. 다만 여기 데이터를 보시면 2011년 후에 창업한 이후에 물론 많은 성과를 이뤘지만 현재 약 1,700만 명 정도의 유저를